Don't skip. Your soulmate secretly tested your honesty and broke down in tears when they found out. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because something happened behind the scenes that you never saw coming. While you were living your life, handling your responsibilities, and moving through ordinary days, someone connected to your journey was quietly searching for answers. And listen to this, they were not looking for perfection. They were not looking for someone who never made mistakes. They were not looking for someone who always said the right thing at exactly the right moment. What they were searching for was something much harder to find. They were searching for honesty. Real honesty. The kind that exists when nobody is watching. The kind that reveals itself through actions rather than words. The kind that cannot be faked for long. And your heart needs this right now because they had reached a point where they could no longer rely on appearances alone. Life had taught them difficult lessons. They had trusted people before. They had believed promises before. They had opened their heart before. And each experience left behind questions, doubts, and emotional scars they rarely spoke about. Because of those experiences, they became careful. More observant. More cautious. They learned that words can sound beautiful while hiding something completely different underneath. They learned that not everyone is who they appear to be. And over time, they built walls around themselves without even realizing it. And listen to this, those walls were not created out of anger. They were created out of protection. Every disappointment added another layer. Every broken expectation added another reason to stay guarded. Every painful lesson reinforced the idea that trust should never be given too easily. And your heart needs this right now because when they first started noticing you, those walls were still standing. Strong. High. Difficult to break through. At first, they didn't think much of it. At first, they told themselves it was nothing. At first, they believed you were simply another person passing through their life. But something about you kept catching their attention. And listen to this. It wasn't something obvious. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It wasn't one perfect conversation. It wasn't one grand gesture. Instead, it was a collection of small things. Tiny moments. Subtle details. Things most people would overlook. The way you handled situations when there was nothing to gain. The way you treated people who could do nothing for you. The way you responded when life became difficult. The way your actions seemed to align with your words. And your heart needs this right now because those observations created curiosity inside them. Not obsession. Not certainty. Just curiosity. The kind of curiosity that makes someone pay closer attention. The kind of curiosity that makes someone wonder if there is more beneath the surface. And listen to this. That curiosity eventually turned into something else. A quiet need to know the truth. Not because they wanted to judge you. Not because they wanted to find flaws. But because they needed clarity. They needed to know whether what they were seeing was real. Whether the consistency they noticed would remain consistent over time. Whether the authenticity they sensed was genuine or temporary. And your heart needs this right now because that is when the test began. Not a dramatic test. Not a manipulative test. Not a game. A quiet test. A hidden test. A test built into ordinary moments. They watched. They observed. They listened. And they paid attention to details you never realized mattered. And listen to this, they weren't looking at the big moments. They weren't focused on the situations where everyone behaves well. They were focused on the small moments. The moments that reveal character. The moments that expose truth. The moments where a person's real nature quietly reveals itself. They watched how you responded when nobody expected anything from you. They watched how you behaved when honesty was inconvenient. They watched whether your values remained consistent when circumstances changed. And your heart needs this right now because every time they looked closer, they expected to find something different. A contradiction. An inconsistency. A hidden motive. A reason to stay guarded. But that reason never appeared. And listen to this, at first they thought they simply hadn't looked hard enough. So they kept observing. They kept paying attention. They kept waiting for the mask to slip. Because experience had taught them that masks always slip eventually. But something unusual happened. There was no mask. There was no performance. There was no hidden version of you waiting to be discovered. And your heart needs this right now because the more they observed, the more difficult it became to hold on to their doubts. Every new situation seemed to reinforce the same truth. Every observation seemed to lead back to the same conclusion. Every moment seemed to reveal the same thing. You were being yourself. Not pretending. Not performing. Not creating an image. Simply being yourself. And listen to this, that realization affected them more deeply than they expected. Because they were prepared for disappointment. They were prepared for inconsistency. They were prepared for complexity. What they were not prepared for was authenticity. Authenticity is powerful. Not because it demands attention. But because it doesn't need to. It simply exists. Quietly. Naturally. Consistently. And your heart needs this right now because authenticity challenges doubt in a way nothing else can. Every honest action weakened one of their fears. Every consistent choice weakened one of their assumptions. Every genuine moment weakened one of the walls they had built around themselves. And listen to this, they may not have admitted it at first, even to themselves. They may have continued acting as though nothing had changed. They may have continued telling themselves they were simply gathering information. But deep down, something was already shifting. The walls were cracking. The doubts were fading. The questions were changing. And your heart needs this right now because they were no longer asking, is this person genuine? They were beginning to ask, what if they really are? That question changed everything. Because once someone starts considering that possibility, they begin seeing things differently. They begin noticing more. Feeling more. Understanding more. And listen to this, by the time they realized how much their perspective had changed, it was already too late to go back. The test that was supposed to protect them was revealing something they never expected. It wasn't just revealing your honesty. It was revealing how much fear they had been carrying. How much doubt they had been holding. How much they wanted to believe in something real. And your heart needs this right now because this was only the beginning. The answers they were discovering were becoming impossible to ignore. The truth was becoming clearer with every passing day. And the moment they finally accepted what they were seeing, the emotional impact would be far greater than they could possibly imagine. Because sometimes the greatest surprise is not discovering that someone is dishonest. Sometimes the greatest surprise is discovering that someone is exactly who they said they were all along. Don't skip. Your soulmate secretly tested your honesty and broke down in tears when they found out. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now. Because what happened after the test began was something your soulmate never expected. At first, they believed they were simply gathering information. They believed they were protecting themselves. They believed they were being cautious and practical. But listen to this, the more they observed you, the less the situation felt like a test and the more it felt like a discovery. Every time they thought they had finally figured you out, they noticed something else. Another moment. Another choice. Another quiet example of honesty that appeared when there was no reason for it to appear. And your heart needs this right now because authenticity has a way of revealing itself naturally. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for recognition. It simply shows up again and again until it becomes impossible to deny. At first, they looked for inconsistencies. They looked for contradictions. They looked for moments where your words and actions didn't match. They looked for evidence that would justify keeping their walls intact. But every time they searched, they found something different. And listen to this, they started noticing patterns. Not dramatic patterns. Not life-changing events. Small patterns. The way you responded to situations when nobody expected anything from you. The way you remained respectful even when you could have chosen an easier path. The way you stayed true to your principles even when it would have been more convenient not to. And your heart needs this right now because genuine character is rarely revealed through major moments. It is revealed through hundreds of tiny decisions that most people never even notice. The more they paid attention, the more those patterns repeated. The more those patterns repeated, the harder it became to doubt them. And listen to this, they found themselves remembering moments they once overlooked. Conversations that seemed ordinary at the time suddenly felt meaningful. Choices you made that seemed insignificant suddenly carried weight. And your heart needs this right now because once someone begins recognizing authenticity, they start seeing evidence of it everywhere. Every memory became another piece of the puzzle. Every observation became another confirmation. Every interaction became another reminder. And the picture that was forming was becoming impossible to ignore. And listen to this. Your soulmate had expected the test to reveal something about you. Instead, it began revealing something about them. It revealed how much fear they had been carrying. It revealed how much doubt they had learned to live with. It revealed how many assumptions they had built around themselves after past disappointments. Because your heart needs this right now. Sometimes the person being tested is not the one who changes. Sometimes the person conducting the test is the one who experiences the biggest transformation. The more they learned about you, the more they learned about themselves, the more they understood your honesty, the more they recognized their own fears, the more they saw your consistency, the more they questioned why they had expected inconsistency. And listen to this, these realizations did not arrive all at once. They arrived slowly, quietly, over days, weeks, and moments of reflection. Every new observation chipped away at an old belief. Every new realization weakened another doubt. Every new example of your authenticity challenged something they thought they knew about people. And your heart needs this right now because old beliefs are difficult to let go of. Especially beliefs created through pain. Especially beliefs created through disappointment. Especially beliefs that once helped someone survive difficult experiences. But those beliefs were beginning to lose their power. And listen to this, there came a moment when they stopped looking for flaws. A moment when they stopped searching for hidden motives. A moment when they realized they were no longer trying to prove themselves right. Instead, they were trying to understand why the truth they were seeing felt so emotional. Because it wasn't just about honesty anymore. It wasn't just about trust anymore. It wasn't just about being genuine anymore. It was about hope. And your heart needs this right now because hope can be one of the most emotional experiences a person has after spending years protecting themselves from disappointment. Hope asks people to believe again. Hope asks people to lower their defenses. Hope asks people to consider possibilities they once rejected. And your soulmate was beginning to feel hope. Not because of promises. Not because of fantasies. Not because of wishful thinking. But because of evidence. Real evidence. Consistent evidence. The kind of evidence that appears when someone repeatedly shows you who they are. And listen to this, they may have found themselves replaying interactions in their mind. Thinking about things they never thought about before. Reflecting on moments they once dismissed. And your heart needs this right now because every reflection seemed to lead back to the same conclusion. You were not pretending. You were not performing. You were not trying to create an image. You were simply being yourself. And somehow that truth affected them more deeply than they expected. The walls became weaker. The doubts became quieter. The fears became smaller. And listen to this, for the first time in a very long time, they stopped expecting disappointment. They stopped preparing themselves for betrayal. They stopped searching for reasons to stay emotionally distant. Instead, they found themselves wondering what it would feel like to trust what they were seeing. And your heart needs this right now because that question changed everything. Not because it immediately gave them answers. But because it opened a door. A door they had kept locked for a very long time. A door labeled trust. A door labeled vulnerability. A door labeled belief. And once that door began opening, there was no way to completely close it again. And listen to this, by now, the test was no longer serving its original purpose. The answers had already become clear. The truth had already revealed itself. What remained was the emotional impact of that truth. The realization that someone they expected to question had instead become the reason they were questioning their own fears. And your heart needs this right now because that realization carried enormous weight. The weight of understanding. The weight of clarity. The weight of finally seeing something real after preparing yourself for disappointment. And deep down, even before they fully admitted it, they knew something important had changed forever. Because the person they were testing was no longer just someone they were observing. The person they were testing had become the reason they were beginning to believe again. Don't skip. Your soulmate secretly tested your honesty and broke down in tears when they found out. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after all the observations, after all the questions, after all the quiet moments spent searching for answers, your soulmate reached a point where they could no longer deny what they had discovered. And listen to this, the truth did not arrive in a dramatic way. There was no shocking revelation. No sudden event. No single moment that changed everything overnight. Instead, it happened gradually. One realization connected to another. One observation supported another. One memory confirmed another. Until eventually, all the pieces formed a picture so clear that they could no longer look away from it. And your heart needs this right now because the picture they saw was not what they expected. They expected complexity. They expected contradictions. They expected uncertainty. But what they found was something much simpler. Something much rarer. Something much more powerful. They found authenticity. And listen to this, authenticity is difficult to explain to someone who has spent years protecting themselves from disappointment. Because authenticity is not perfection. It is not always saying the right thing. It is not never making mistakes. Authenticity is being real. It is being consistent. It is being the same person when nobody is watching as you are when everyone is watching. And your heart needs this right now because that is exactly what they discovered about you. The more they looked, the more they found the same truth. The more they observed, the more that truth remained unchanged. The more they reflected, the stronger that truth became. And listen to this, eventually they stopped searching for proof because they already had enough of it. They stopped questioning whether your honesty was genuine because every experience pointed toward the same answer. They stopped looking for hidden motives because they could not find any. And your heart needs this right now because once someone reaches that point, something powerful begins happening inside them. The focus shifts. The questions change. The journey becomes internal. And instead of asking, "Can I trust this person?" they begin asking, "Why was I so afraid to trust in the first place?" And listen to this, that question hit them harder than anything they expected. Because suddenly they were no longer examining you. They were examining themselves. Their fears. Their doubts. Their past disappointments. The walls they built around their heart. The assumptions they carried for years without questioning them. And your heart needs this right now because they started realizing how much emotional weight they had been carrying. Weight from old heartbreaks. Weight from broken promises. Weight from people who said one thing and did another. weight from experiences that taught them to stay guarded. And for the first time, they saw how those experiences had shaped the way they looked at everyone. Even you. And listen to this, that realization brought emotion with it. Deep emotion. The kind that appears when someone finally understands something they have been avoiding for a very long time. The kind that appears when years of fear suddenly collide with unexpected truth. And your heart needs this right now because they realized they had been preparing for disappointment long before they ever had a reason to be disappointed. They had expected the worst. Prepared for the worst. Protected themselves from the worst. Only to discover that the truth was completely different. And that realization overwhelmed them. And listen to this, they may have found themselves sitting alone, replaying everything in their mind. Every observation. Every conversation. Every moment they once doubted. Looking back and seeing it all differently now. And your heart needs this right now because hindsight can be emotional. Sometimes we realize that the truth was in front of us all along. Sometimes we realize that our fears were louder than reality. Sometimes we realize that we almost missed something important because we were too busy protecting ourselves. And that realization can bring tears. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of heartbreak. But tears of release. And listen to this, release is powerful. It happens when someone finally lets go of emotional burdens they have carried for too long. It happens when fear loses its grip. It happens when doubt stops controlling every decision. And your heart needs this right now because that is exactly what was happening inside them. Years of caution. Years of uncertainty. Years of emotional defenses. All beginning to fall away. And for a moment, they simply felt everything. The relief. The gratitude. The hope. The understanding. The realization that genuine people still exist. And listen to this, those tears were never really about you alone. They were about what discovering your honesty represented. It represented possibility. It represented trust. It represented the idea that not everyone is hiding something. It represented the idea that sincerity is still real. And your heart needs this right now because that realization touched a part of them they thought had been closed for a very long time. A part that still wanted to believe. A part that still wanted to trust. A part that still hoped something genuine existed. And suddenly, that hope felt justified. And listen to this. As the emotions settled, a new feeling began replacing them. Clarity. Not confusion. Not uncertainty. Clarity. The kind that comes after a storm finally passes. The kind that arrives when all the questions have been answered. The kind that changes the way someone sees everything moving forward. And your heart needs this right now because they were no longer wondering who you were. They knew. They were no longer questioning your intentions. They understood. They were no longer searching for proof. They had already found it. And that is why they broke down. Not because they discovered something painful. But because they discovered something real. Something genuine. Something they had almost stopped believing existed. And in that moment, they realized that the test had ended long ago. The answer had already been revealed. The truth had already won. And nothing inside them would ever be quite the same again. Don't skip. Your soulmate secretly tested your honesty and broke down in tears when they found out. Don't skip. Listen to this carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after the tears faded, after the emotions settled, and after the truth became impossible to deny, your soulmate found themselves standing in a place they never expected to reach. And listen to this, the biggest surprise was not what they discovered about you. The biggest surprise was how deeply that discovery changed them. Because your heart needs this right now, they began this journey looking for answers about someone else, but they ended it learning something important about themselves. At first, they believed the test would protect them. They believed it would help them avoid disappointment. They believed it would confirm their fears. But instead, it challenged those fears. It questioned those fears. It slowly began destroying those fears. And listen to this, once they accepted the truth about your honesty, they could no longer hold on to the assumptions they had carried for so long. Those assumptions no longer made sense. The stories they told themselves about why they needed to stay guarded no longer felt convincing. The emotional walls they had relied upon suddenly seemed unnecessary. And your heart needs this right now because walls only remain standing when fear continues feeding them. The moment fear loses its power, those walls begin to crumble on their own. They started seeing things differently. They started thinking differently. They started feeling differently. And most importantly, they started trusting differently. And listen to this, trust is not something that appears overnight. Trust grows slowly. Quietly. Through repeated evidence. Through consistency. Through truth. And your heart needs this right now because every observation they made about you became another reason to trust what they were seeing. Every honest action became another reason to believe. Every moment of authenticity became another reminder that not everyone deserves the doubts created by someone else's mistakes. The past had taught them fear. But the truth they discovered about you was teaching them hope. And that lesson changed everything. And listen to this. They may have found themselves reflecting on the entire journey. Thinking about the moments when they doubted. Thinking about the moments when they questioned. Thinking about the moments when they almost convinced themselves not to believe what was right in front of them. And your heart needs this right now because hindsight has a way of revealing how much someone has grown. They realized they were not the same person anymore. The version of them that expected disappointment at every corner was fading. The version of them that assumed sincerity was rare was fading. The version of them that relied on fear as protection was fading. A new version was emerging. A stronger version. A wiser version. A more open version. And listen to this. That transformation did not happen because someone forced it to happen. It happened because truth has power. Real truth. The kind that survives observation. The kind that survives questions. The kind that survives doubt. And your heart needs this right now because that is the kind of truth they discovered in you. Not a temporary truth. Not a convenient truth. A lasting truth. A truth that remained the same every time they looked closer. And that consistency changed the way they viewed everything. And listen to this, they began understanding that honesty is not about grand speeches. It is not about convincing people. It is not about constantly proving yourself. Honesty is revealed through everyday actions. Through ordinary moments. Through choices nobody applauds. And your heart needs this right now because those ordinary moments told them more about you than any explanation ever could. The truth revealed itself naturally. The truth revealed itself quietly. The truth revealed itself repeatedly. Until there was nothing left to question. And listen to this. Once someone reaches that level of clarity, they cannot simply return to who they were before. Clarity changes perspective. Perspective changes decisions. Decisions change lives. And your heart needs this right now because your soulmate now carries a different understanding than they carried before this journey began. They understand your value differently. They understand your character differently. They understand your authenticity differently. And those understandings are now part of them. They cannot be forgotten. They cannot be ignored. They cannot be undone. And listen to this, perhaps the most emotional realization of all was understanding how close they came to missing it. How close they came to allowing fear to speak louder than truth. How close they came to remaining trapped inside old assumptions. And your heart needs this right now because realizing what you almost lost can be just as powerful as realizing what you found. That realization brought gratitude. Gratitude for the truth. Gratitude for the clarity. Gratitude for the lesson. And gratitude for the fact that genuine people still exist. And listen to this, by the time this journey reached its end, one thing had become completely clear. The test was never really about proving whether you were honest. The test became a mirror. A mirror that reflected their fears. Their doubts. Their hopes. Their beliefs. And through that reflection, they learned something they will never forget. They learned that authenticity still exists. They learned that trust is still possible. They learned that sincerity is still real. And most importantly, they learned that sometimes the person who changes the most is not the person being tested. It is the person doing the testing. And your heart needs this right now because that is where the story truly ends. Not with a test. Not with doubt. Not with fear. But with understanding. The understanding that truth does not need to fight to be seen. Truth simply remains itself until someone is finally ready to recognize it. And now they have recognized it. They have seen it. They have felt it. They have accepted it. And because of that, the truth they discovered about you will stay with them long after the questions have disappeared, long after the doubts have faded, and long after the test itself has been forgotten. Because some discoveries do not simply answer questions. Some discoveries change a person's heart forever.